is Father John Hughes, and I want to welcome you back to our fourth month in our 12-part summary of the Adult Spirituality Formation booklet called Guided by the Holy Angel. This month, we're going to be talking about how friendship with the guardian angel raises us to the heights of virtue. And we want to talk specifically about the theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity, as well as the underlying virtue of humility and also silence and measure. But the fundamental aspect of this month, it talks about the theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity. And that's how we have it broken down in these 5 parts. And so I want to start out then with faith. Faith is, of course, a virtue of the intellect. And what it does is it enables our mind to accept or assent to divine truths. Truths that we would not be able to know about except for their having been revealed to us by God through His church. And so it is a true awareness of truths that we would not have any way of knowing except for the fact that God reveals it to us. So it is by faith that we are aware of supernatural truths. These truths protect us. As I mentioned in some of the earlier conferences with regard to discerning of spirits, these truths protect us from being deceived by the evil spirits in our prayer life. Faith, while it is an intellectual virtue, it also has a part to play in our trusting in God. And so faith leads to fidelity. That requires this trust. That requires also discipline and fortitude. Now, fidelity is about persevering until death. And also, this fidelity is a perseverance, but it's also being faithful to the person, God, but also to His representatives on earth. So fidelity means we are going to avoid any kind of criticism about God, about His saints, about His church, about the Holy Father, about the bishops, cardinals, priests, deacons. We want to avoid any kind of criticism that will be a hampering of our fidelity. The faith opens us up to the message of the angel, because the angel wants to speak to us about the eternal truths of God. And so, by being aware of these truths in faith, this gives the angel, how can we say, material to work with, to speak to us. We spoke of how the angel gives us messages by means of illuminations, by means of intuitions, by means of inspirations. Well, it's precisely because of the knowledge that we obtain through the faith that the guardian angel has material to work with. The guardian angel can help us to understand our faith better. He can help us to be in the present moment, recollected, or in the presence of God in this faith in silence. Now, a mature faith will always want to obey. Will always want to obey without delay and without rebellion, without a rebellious attitude. Now, when I say without delay, what that means is a common sense without delay. It means we don't put things off until it's too late. It doesn't mean that, it's like, oh, it's got to be done now, it's got to be done now, it's got to be done now. No, it just means we don't put things off when they can be done at the present or near future. The guardian angel helps us with this. Or there can be a time where when we are told to do something that we have a very rebellious attitude, because the simple fact that we don't want to do it. We want to do our own will. And even though we submit our will in faith and do the command, well, we do it with a rebellious attitude, or with a bit of anger, with a bit of regret, okay? And that reveals an immaturity in our faith. But a mature faith, there will be none of that. With a mature faith, we will be able to automatically accept right away any order, because we are indifferent to what we want. And we want only to live for the other. So that's a mature faith. One of the most beautiful things about faith is that faith teaches us about the reality of communion. Communion with God, communion with the communion of saints, the angels, the saints in heaven, and communion with our brothers and sisters. This is a beautiful reality that faith opens us up to, gives us a knowledge of. Because this communion, of course, is fundamental to the theological virtue of charity, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, because that's what charity is. It's about friendship. It's loving friendship. And that's what communion is. Communion is about a relationship. And of course, it's a relationship that is familiar. We are brought into the family of God. We are made members of the family of God. So we're brought into this communion, and this is what the faith teaches us about. It's very beautiful truth. So next I'd like to talk about the virtue of hope. Hope is a virtue of the will. Hope is the dynamism of faith. It's a very powerful virtue which impels us forward to do the things for the kingdom of God. We can have maybe a bit of a misunderstanding of hope. And of course, it would be coincide with a misunderstanding of the faith in general. Many times we can think of hope as, yes, I want to be with God in heaven because I believe that this is my true happiness. But then we think that that means, that we have to live a very sad, boring, depressing life here and now, that we can't enjoy any of the good things in life. Now, that's not the case. That's the wrong understanding of the theological virtue of hope. Hope brings us into spiritual joys, the spiritual good things of life. Hope enters into the curtain of the celestial tabernacle in heaven. And what that means is that hope brings down for us now already a foretaste of the joy of heaven. Again, a foretaste of this joy. I mean, we experience this joy now. And therefore, hope animates us. It motivates us to pass on our experience of Jesus as well as the hope that animates us. We want to pass on all of this to our brothers and sisters. We want to make them aware that, yes, the Christian life is a good life. It's a joyful life. It's not just a question of waiting to be happy with God in heaven after death while we suffer boredom, sorrow, and depression in this life. No, the Christian life is a good, happy life. Hope is, again, the taste of this joy. Now, we can think of our prayer life. We can think of contemplation. And contemplation, as we grow into it, enter into it more deeply, we find that it's very much tied to hope, because it's in contemplation that we have an experiential knowledge of God, that we receive an experiential, loving knowledge of God in contemplation. And so it's in contemplation that we receive the one thing necessary, God. It's in contemplation where we receive this joy of living relationship with God. Now, that's what hope is. We hope for this eternal beatific vision where we have God as the supreme satisfaction of our lives for all eternity. We touch on this a little bit with contemplation. And then contemplation leads to our response. We receive the one thing necessary, God, through contemplation, and we respond with adoration, with acknowledging God as the supreme, omnipotent creator, redeemer, and sanctifier, and of all that is good, and to praise Him, and to want to bring others to Him. So, hope is strengthened with a deepening of our prayer life. As we deepen our prayer life, we enter more deep into contemplation, we receive God, who is the one thing necessary, and that sets our hearts afire to love God with adoration and service. Now, hope also gives us the power, animates us to undergo the necessary purifications that bring about peace and give us that joy of the Christian life. These purifications are times that can be painful, that can be dry, that can be boring, that can be sad at times, okay? But they pass. And they pass in a reasonably short period of time. Some saints have passed greater lengths, others to greater lengths of time. Other saints have passed lesser lengths of times in order to have these purifications brought about in them. But these purifications, they purify our passions. And once purified, we have peace. And then this peace wells up into joy. But it's hope. We hope to experience the peace of purified passions, and so hope motivates us to pass through these purification periods. Hope lifts up our spirit then to communion. And we talked about faith giving us knowledge about communion. Well, hope lifts up our spirit to this communion. Again, we think of contemplation. While we want to go to our time of prayer in charity for the sake of God, but nonetheless, there's a certain hope there that we will have a nice, beautiful experience with God also. If we don't, that's fine. It doesn't matter. And that's not why we want to go there. Our motivation is for love of God, purely. But on the other hand, though, we're very happy to have a beautiful experience with God. And when we take it, we accept it with joy. So hope lifts our spirit to this communion with God. Again, this foretaste of heaven. Also, though, with our angels and saints, and also with our brothers and sisters, we can recognize the beauty of fraternal charity in hope. We can recognize we can anticipate the moments when our fraternal life manifests itself in a way that you would see in heaven, in a way that you would see, for instance, in the movies. I remember seeing this movie about these religious brothers who were in a Muslim country, and they wound up being martyred. But their relationship was so beautiful. The superior was truly a father figure to the other monks, and he took care of them, the father. There was one beautiful, touching scene where one of the monks fell asleep in bed. He had his light on, and his glasses were still on, and the superior came in, and he took his glasses off, and he shut the light off, and he tucked them in, just like a father would. This is a type of, we can hope for this type of fraternal communion in our families, in our communities, and we can strive for that. So hope lifts us up to this spirit of communion. Also, we spoke in earlier conferences about wanting to be with those whom we serve, not wanting to just do a job to get it done with, but to want to spend time with the person. Well, that's what also we hope for. We can hope for that a greater charity, a growing charity where we do, or we're capable, I should say, but we're capable of giving ourselves more completely to our brothers. Not just for the sake of getting a job done, to help them and assist them and then be done with it, but in the sense that we can be there with them while we're serving them. And then that leads us to charity. Now, charity should come from the intellect and will. Okay, I say intellect and will because charity is a virtue of love, and love is a virtue of the will. But we can love because we have free choice. We choose to love. And the reason why we have free choice is because we have an intellect. And therefore, charity is very much a part of the intellect and the will. We know what we love through faith, and we choose it in charity. And the difference, one of the differences between charity and hope, the fundamental difference is that charity is always for the other, or hope is for the other, but it is also a return for us. So hope is not completely, there's self-interest in hope, okay, but nonetheless it is a virtue, and so it's a healthy self-interest. It's a healthy self-love. But charity is completely for the other. And our actions then should spring from our intellect and will, and basically it's wanting to do God's will in order to please Him. And we want to do God's will in order to please Him because this last aspect, in order to please Him, is important because we may want to do God's will to avoid punishment. Okay, in other words, it's for our own selfish reasons. We might want to do God's will in order to grow in virtue. Again, it's deceivingly or subtly more for us. It's like, yes, I want to do God's will. It's because I want to be perfect. Well, no, we want to do God's will in order to please God. We want to be for the other. And we can do that because God gives us everything. Since we've already received it, we don't have to worry about ourselves. We can give to God and our neighbors fully because we receive first from God. But not only do we want to do God's will in order to please Him, but we also want to be with God. Now there's two ways of looking at it. You can say that wanting to be with God is a part of doing God's will because God wants us to want to be with Him. But it's good to separate the two because we can fall into a little bit of a trap of maybe, yes, well, I want to do God's will, but, I don't want to be with Him. I want to live my life, do God's will as much as I can, fulfill my duties and all that kind of stuff. But how much do we really want to be with God? That's a question. Are we animated with the thought of being with God throughout the day, of walking in the presence of God? Does that animate us, or does it leave us feeling a little kind of dry, like, whoa, what do you mean? Spending the whole day with God. What do you mean being in the presence of God, walking with God throughout the day? Is it enough just to do His will? Well, friendship is about being with a friend. And we find that when we learn to walk with God, well, that opens us up to be with everybody else too. And it also helps us to have a healthy self-love as well. So, charity depends on purity of heart. And we talked about how hope animates us to undergo purifications to obtain this purity of heart. Well, this purity of heart gives us freedom. The freedom to love God, to be with God, to serve God, serving our brothers and sisters. It's ready for sacrifice. Sacrifice that is grounded in faith. Again, when we have the peace of Christ, we don't mind sacrificing things. When we aren't attached to things, we don't mind sacrificing things for the love of God. It's when we have an excessive attachment to things that we don't want to perform sacrifices. So purification is ready for sacrifice. And we shouldn't be afraid of any sacrifice, because first of all, we have the peace of Christ, and so we don't miss the things that we do away with anyways. But also, Archbishop Fulton Sheen always says, there is no cross that is as difficult as it seems. Sometimes the evil one can present a sacrifice, present some kind of suffering as being something that, oh, there's no way we can deal with it, there's no way we can do it. When the truth is that, no, we can deal with it. We can do it. There's no problem. He's just trying to get us to turn away from God. So there's no cross that is as difficult as it seems, so we shouldn't be afraid of any sacrifice. Because sacrifices not only purify the heart, but they also sustain it in this purity, in this freedom, which gives us peace of mind and heart. And of course, obedience is a fundamental aspect of charity. Obedience is a yes to God's charity, and it is, of course, the greatest freedom. We can think of obedience in two ways. We can think of obedience of a servant. And this is where it's important to think about wanting to be with God. Because we can obey God, but at the same time not want to be with God. But charity, love, friendship, wants to be with the beloved. We want to be with God. And so, if we obey, but at the same time are far from God throughout the day, well, that's more of a servile obedience. Whereas when we want to be with God, well, we obey, but we also want to share His life. That's friendship. And so obedience, this greatest freedom, should be encompassed in this friendship. And this friendship is something very beautiful. It's full of joy, it's full of peace. So we shouldn't think of it as something that's going to make our lives sad. On the contrary, it's going to give us that peace and joy of the Christian life. So obedience is the greatest freedom. Obedience of charity, obedience of friendship, the obedience of communion. Now this friendship, being with the other, charity, again, we can talk about that in the sense also of when we are working with others, especially the poor or the sick, helping someone out. This wanting to be with the other prevents a condescending attitude of going there to get the job done, to be done with it and then leave. That type of attitude comes across to the person we're helping, and it's humiliating because it really makes a condescending attitude. It makes the person feel belittled. Like, yes, I'm here to help you because I'm up here and you're down here, and I'm going to help you because I'm superior to you, and then when I'm done helping you, I'm going to leave you, and you can thank me for my help. It's a condescending attitude. But when we want to be with our neighbor, talk with our neighbor, spend time with them, not just get the job to get out of the way, we recognize that they are at the same level as us. And so in that sense, we want to be with them, and this leads to also that creative love by being attentive to their needs and therefore being able to invent new ways to take care of them because we are aware of what they need. It helps us to be creative, it helps us to be truly loving and not condescending. Being with the other, communion, true friendship, charity, fraternal charity. And then of course, the guardian angel can help us with all of this. But then the guardian angel also, in particular, he strengthens us and encourages us to go forth with the purifications that we need to grow in charity, that we need to grow in all faith, hope, and charity. So those are the three theological virtues. Next, I'd just like to talk very briefly about humility. So underlying all of the virtues is humility. Humility fights against many things. It fights against distrust, jealousy, envy, resentment. It fights against a know-it-all attitude and a being better than the other person attitude. But humility keeps us free from one another. Lets us recognize that we are all equal, we're all brothers and sisters in the kingdom of God, and we have no reason to consider ourselves superior to any particular person. And this humility then flows from a self-knowledge, knowing that we are nothing in and of ourselves, and everything we have we receive from God, and God sustains it in us, and we can do no good work without God. The only thing that we can take credit for, and of course we can't take credit, is our sin. That's what we do in and of ourselves, is sin. So everything good that we do comes from God. And lastly, we can talk about silence and measure. Silence, we mentioned in the earlier conferences, is recollection. So silence is recollection, and this recollection leads to a proper measure in our thoughts, in our words, in our deeds. We speak of these as two different virtues, and they are different objects, but at the same time they flow together, and it's such a natural fit between the two that, of course, when we're recollected, we're going to have a good, proper measure. We're not going to be thinking of things we shouldn't be thinking of. We're not going to be doing things we shouldn't. We're not going to be speaking things we shouldn't. We're going to have a good measure, doing everything in the proper time and place. So, silence and measure, two beautiful accent marks on the theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity, and all of it underlined, and the foundation virtue of humility. Thank you for your time, and God bless you.